Ayo Brothers. I'm watching Ayo Brothers. I'm watching ESPN First Take. Today they have a guest on, Adam Silver, the commissioner of the NBA, and he's talking about a wide variety of topics. One of the things being the new in-season tournament, and I love this idea. I love the idea of the in-season tournament. It adds some excitement to the regular season, the start of the regular season, and it also pushes some of that competitive further. So let's go ahead and tap into this.
Honor and privilege to have the one and only Adam Silver here in attendance with us. Thank you for being here, first of all.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I just want to get right to it. I'm thinking about last season, and the NBA set records for total attendance, average attendance, percentage of capacity, and sellouts. 22.2 million total fans in attendance, 791 sellouts, an average attendance of 18,077, 90.
The reason for that, brothers, is because you have a wider range of talent dispersed throughout the league. The NBA has to have talent in all its markets. That's how you increase the fan base and the fan interest. You can't just have 4 or 5 teams that are good in the NBA. Last season, the Cleveland Cavaliers got better. They were terrible for 3, 4, 5 years. The Sacramento Kings last year, they finally broke through. They were terrible for some years. The Oklahoma City Thunder, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander looked like a damn near MVP level player last season. He was averaging over 30 last season. Let's understand these things, man. Also, you had the KD and Kyrie Irving in Brooklyn for a period of time. You know, wider variety, wider disparity of talent. The Denver Nuggets looked good last season. They actually won the championship last season. The Lakers were good last season. You have to keep these things in mind. The Utah Jazz were good last season, and they traded Donovan Mitchell. Nobody thought that the Utah Jazz would be a good team last year, and they ended up being a good team for the first 40-so games of the season. So that's the key to keeping the league relevant and selling out in the league and breaking those records as far as attendance and viewership, is having a wide variety of talent dispersed throughout the league. You had Paolo Banchero out down there in Orlando. You had a wide variety of talent, and that's the key. You have to uplift these smaller markets as well. You can't just have only main market, big market, large market teams being the relevant teams in the NBA.
7% capacity. Those are the numbers that I have. It would seem like the NBA is in a fantastic position looking on the outside in.
I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that at all. I wouldn't say the NBA is in a fantastic position. The NBA is not that appealing right now. It's the style of play is not the most appealing that I've ever seen. They have to work on some of the appeal of the NBA. But in general, like I said, the reason why the NBA is growing a little bit is because they're uplifting these smaller market teams.
Tell us how you feel about where you guys are right now.
Thanks for reading all those statistics. No, we're in a great position. I think from a attendance standpoint, as you said, almost you can't fit more people in our arenas, so there's not a lot of growth that will come there. I mean, we're always, hats off to our teams and improving the experience. You go to a lot of games, everything's gotten better from the food to the way, the hospitality, everything along the lines there. But so really then it's about media. Of course, you and your folks.
The media is extremely important. The media is basically the intermediary between the masses and the fans, the masses and the viewers. The media has to do a better job of creating true narratives, not false narratives, doing real journalism, and once again, getting these smaller market teams some exposure. You're not going to be able to sell the league on a massive scale if you do not have smaller market teams that are relevant. You have to. Sports is a way that you can build up some of these smaller market areas and cities, and you can make these smaller market areas become middle market areas and turn a middle market area into a large market area. Sports has that type of power. The media has that type of power. You can boost the economy in some of these areas. This is one of the reasons why Adam Silver is putting the All-Star game in different areas and things of that nature. Next year, the All-Star game is going to be in Indiana. And a lot of people are saying, I don't want to go to Indiana, blah, blah, blah. But it's not about that. It's about selling the entire league. You can't just have the All-Star game in LA and Miami all the time. Sell the league.
ESPN, our partners have been for many years. And I think what we're seeing now is this transition where people first look to their phones, rather than to televisions these days. So the question is, how can we do a better job presenting our games to people, particularly a younger audience that lives on their phone as opposed to being in front of a television? And I think it's not.
And that's something that they're going to struggle with. A lot of people play video games today. A lot of people are on TikTok. A lot of people are on YouTube. A lot of people are on Instagram, Twitter. There's a lot more to distract the minds of the masses of people today. And you have to be aware of that when you're trying to sell a product that's known for being on cable television. A lot of people are moving away from cable television. Quite frankly, me personally, I don't see the point in cable television for the most part anymore, because most people are only watching about 3 or 4 channels on cable television anyway. I mean, if I'm watching cable television, I'm probably going to be watching a live event, the news, or a sporting event. Simple as that. I'm probably going to be watching ESPN, TNT, ABC, CBS, Fox. These are the main channels that people are going to be watching, which is why a lot of these other companies are going to streaming. HBO, Cinemax, Stars, they have streaming now. You can buy a plan or membership for their services for $3 to $5 a month. That's smart. BET Plus, Tyler Perry has a few decent shows on BET Plus, interesting shows on BET Plus. You can pay, a $7, $8, $9 membership for that.
Not just taking those same, call it a stream that's on conventional television, moving it to your phone. It's taking advantage of all the functionality that comes with personalization, customization, alerts, the engagement that comes through fantasy, betting, merchandising.
Sports betting is going to completely change the game. You're going to have people interested in all types of sports just because of betting, because the potential to make lots of money. Baseball, hockey, those are sports that are viewed as the bottom sports in America in comparison to football and basketball. Those sports are going to gain interest because people are betting money and gambling on some of these sports. That's going to raise interest, especially baseball.
All of that will be part of the experience going forward, and all on a global basis.
You guys have been in the news a lot over the last few weeks, particularly when it came to the player participation policy. Obviously, there were rules changes, some things that were implemented to address concerns about players treating the regular season with the level of priority you guys would like. Speak to that for a second and play.
Once again, that goes back to the media. The media cannot continue to talk about only 3 or 4 teams. The media has to do a better job of creating these rivalries and building up anticipation for some of these matchups. We can't sit up here and have the same narrative being spewed out in a different way, 30 different ways every time. You have to talk about a wide variety of teams. Talk about all these teams in the NBA, not just one team. That's how we can combat a lot of these players sitting out and things of that nature. There's more emphasis placed on some of these games.
In terms of the player participation policy, the reason you felt the need for it and how you think it's going to work.
Absolutely. And in fairness to our players, it was as much a team issue as a player issue. And I understand it. I think in the day and age of analytics, teams, and we're seeing this in all sports, they become laser-like focused on the ultimate prize, which is winning the championship. And then they're willing to.
And that's true. The ultimate prize is winning a championship. But one thing I will notice is that a lot of these players, they don't take the regular season serious enough. And because they don't take the regular season serious enough, by the time they get to the playoffs, they don't have that extra level to get to, or some of these guys have that extra level to get to, but their teammates aren't there yet. This is one of the problems with LeBron James. LeBron James hasn't taken the regular season serious since he left Miami. And I'm not mad at LeBron James for not going 100% in the regular season, but in general, you have to get your troops ready. Throughout the regular season, you're going to find yourself in certain situations that are going to prepare you for the playoffs. You're down by 15 in the third quarter. What do? How do you dig yourself out of that hole? You're down by 5 with 2 minutes to go. What do? How did you dig yourself out of that hole? You were down by 25 at the end of the first half. What did you do? Little different situations. You're on the road. It's overtime. How are you going to muscle up this extra strength and the extra energy to get out of this situation. There's going to be pressurized situations and moments where your star player may not have it that night, and you need somebody else to step up. Who's that guy? You learn a lot of those things over the course of an 82-game regular season. But if guys are not taking the regular season serious, by the time they get to the playoffs, the coaching staff and the players are not going to know who that guy is. And what's going to happen is you're going to get exposed in the playoffs, and you see that constantly. A lot of teams get exposed in the playoffs because they're not taking the regular season serious enough. One of the problems with the Golden State Warriors is that Stephen Curry continues to get injured in the regular season. Stephen Curry has injury problems. Stephen Curry has always had injury problems. He was able to win those two MVPs, one of them unanimous, and that was a great thing. But in general, Stephen Curry has injury problems. His injury problems prevent his team from being fully successful in the playoffs. They don't have him in the regular season. You can't expect them to just run on autopilot all the time. They don't have Kevin Durant.
Sacrifice, in essence, in some cases, fan interest during the regular season because, at least from their standpoint, they had data that was showing them that if they rested players tactically, strategically at certain games, they would be better off. I think, one, we're hearing loud and clearly from our fans, the media as a proxy for the fans, that people are disappointed. I mean, I put aside those terrible stories of, a family going to the game, but I think even in terms of where it really scales, from a media standpoint, if we expect people to care about our regular season, our players and our teams have to be fully invested in being out there. And as Joe Dumars, our head of basketball operations.
Yes, the NBA, I'm cool with what the NBA is doing. They're not saying that you can't rest certain games or sit out certain games because you're injured and things of that nature. But if you are sitting out in a certain game and it's nationally televised, meaning there's a marquee matchup, as well as an in-season tournament game, which is also a marquee matchup, then you're going to lose the NBA money, and those games are highly anticipated, and a lot of people are paying money to see those games, and they're not getting their money's worth. Simple as that, man. If I'm living in my area or my market or whatever, and the Golden State Warriors are coming into town and Stephen Curry isn't playing, I'm going to be extremely disappointed. I'm going to be like, I didn't pay my money to see the Golden State Warriors. I paid my money because I wanted to see the Golden State Warriors and Stephen Curry. Really, I wanted to see Stephen Curry. I wanted to see Stephen Curry go out there and drop his 30, 32 points per game and go out there and dominate, and hopefully the team that I'm rooting for wins. So yeah, man, I'm all in favor of that, man. They have to do something about this. The star players have to play.
As I said, we got to reinforce the fact we're an 82-game league. You can almost hear Joe say it, 82-game league, and the expectation is that if players are healthy, they will play. And as I said, that's not just directed to our players, it's directed at our teams, our general managers. Everyone in the organization has to understand that this is a fan-first business, that particularly because of some of the media changes we talked about, that we're moving less away from sort of a bundle environment where you just pay one price and you get everything. This notion that I'm only going to pay for what I want. And so it's also a response to the marketplace, a realization that in order to keep our business going, we have to constantly be putting our best foot forward. And that's where the notion of a play-in tournament came from. I'm sure the in-season tournament we'll talk about, which is new this season. Just things to create more excitement throughout the regular season. But as you said, I think sometimes there's a notion that something's very broken. I don't agree with that at all. As you started with the data on what we're seeing in terms of attendance, all-time record attendance. So the fans are also telling us they love this product, the coverage we have around the clock. I think.
Yeah, sometimes it's not about things being broken. Sometimes it's about being able to see into the future and understanding that, yeah, things are not broken right now necessarily, but you want to continue to enhance and better your product. You want to stay on the top. You want to stay on the up and up and continue to promote the league, push the league, and sell the league to the best of your capabilities, and don't get complacent. Don't get complacent. When you look up some stuff from back in the 90s or 80s, whatever, Kodak was a camera company. They used to take pictures, and then you would go to a store and they would print out and laminate the pictures for you. At some point, somebody came out with the digital camera, so now you don't have to go get pictures laminated. The same person at that company, Kodak, he's the one that came up with the digital phone, the idea for the digital phone. The Kodak company, they rejected it. He took his idea somewhere else. Now Kodak is out of business. Sometimes you have to be able to see ahead and be able to plan accordingly and move accordingly.
This is more a little bit around the edges because by all means, and again, going back to Joe Dumars, during his day, he'll tell stories. A lot of
And Joe Dumars is one of the greatest players of all time. I'm not going to say he's a top 10 or nothing like that. But Joe Dumars is one of the greatest defenders of all time, one of the greatest shooting guards of all time, and he played on that bad boy Detroit Pistons team, and he won a Finals MVP. A lot of people like to hate on Michael Jordan because he lost against the Detroit Pistons. The Detroit Pistons are one of the greatest teams ever assembled. They have probably by far the greatest backcourt of all time. Isaiah Thomas and Joe Dumars is probably the greatest backcourt of all time. And when you consider the fact that Isaiah Thomas was only 5'11", it's even greater. Even greater. That is the standard that you must set and establish if you want a great backcourt. If you want a great backcourt, that's what your identity should be. And your identity has to be defense, meaning you have to have the greatest defensive backcourt, not just the greatest offensive backcourt, but the greatest defensive backcourt. That team was loaded, man. Jordan went through a challenging East. When you go back and look at that time period, man, he went through Detroit, you had Cleveland, you had Atlanta, you had Boston, you had all these other teams, man. You had these great teams, man. This is not a slouch. These are not slouches, man. You needed a team, you needed a crew.
players you and I know well, former players, played when they shouldn't have been playing. And there's no attempt here to turn the clock back. We're not looking for guys to play through injuries. We're just looking for guys to recognize that, we got to be focused on the fans, and that if you're healthy, you may be a little bit banged up. The expectation is you'll play. Even, and I think this gets a little bit confused too, there's what Joe Dumars has out been saying recently. It's sort of the headline is load management doesn't work. I think what we've learned is it doesn't necessarily work in terms of injury prevention, but there's no question that if you're playing in the back of the
load management doesn't work. I mean, at the end of the day, you have to have the ability to be in shape and play through injuries. Now, if you're in a unique circumstance like Kawhi Leonard and things of that nature, and you have nagging knee injuries and issues and stuff like that, that's different. If you have a sore calf muscle and you feel like it's tight and things of that nature before the game, you shouldn't go out there. But if it's guys out there that really are just going out there because just really resting and there's nothing wrong with them at all, they saying, no, I'm going to just rest tonight. I don't want to put that extra wear and tear on my body tonight. I'm just going to rest and take a day off. You can't do that in a billion-dollar industry like this. You're getting paid over $1 million a game, some of these guys, and you can't do that on nationally televised events. That's the most important thing. And at the end of the day, I mean, the NBA needs to extremely consider giving some of the fans their money back if you're paying for these tickets under the notion and under the mindset that a star player is playing and they don't play. I think I need a discount. I need some of my money back.
The second game of a back-to-back, there's diminished performance to a certain degree, to the extent guys are tired or they've been playing multiple games on the road. Their performance will dip a little bit, but it's still the expectation that if you're not going to hurt yourself, you got to be out there.
What about the player, whether directly or indirectly, that looks at it and says, it's being perceived as if it's our fault? I know you just alluded to it not always being the fault. You're not directing it at just the players. You're directing it at the teams, because covering the league, team doctors, the guys in the analytics department, they collaborate with one another. They may come to the conclusion that a player may not need to play. They may make that decision for the player, and the player has to capitulate to whatever they suggest, and the players are taking the heat for it. You had a lot of people out there, particularly with Kawhi Leonard along with others, they sort of gave the impression they were taking heat that was undeserved. What do you say to the players? What do you say to the public about the players when it comes to that?
I say that we have this
Look, the NBA needs to seriously consider an availability clause. Simple as that. An availability clause. Put that in their contracts. And they've somewhat tried to do that by saying that you do not qualify for regular season awards if you do not participate in at least 65 games. I'm all on board with that, but in general, there needs to be stipulations in these guys' contracts that it state, if you're not available for a certain amount of games, then it's going to start to cut into the amount of money that you can earn. That's how you get into that. At some point, like certain jobs, I mean, you have so many call offs, you have point systems, you have so many call offs before it's like, all right, now this is a write up. Another write up, you're terminated. Or you have so many days you can use, and then we're only going to pay you half of your money. It has to get to that point. Simple as that. But these guys are making so much money that they don't really care. It's guys like James Harden, Ben Simmons, these guys have made so much money over the course of their career. They're just like, all right, I mean, you can't use $10-15 million to hold me hostage. That's the problem there too. The game is never going to be the same. The game is never going to be what it was decades ago because these guys are making an extremely high amount of money.
Incredible partnership with the Players Association. Tamika Tremalio is the executive director, CJ McCollum now as the president. And when we came together in collective bargaining and to talk about this issue, there wasn't a lot of dissent in the room. We agreed to the 65-game minimum. That's sort of a separate issue in terms of being eligible for awards. But I hope nobody thinks that means there's an expectation guys will only play 65 games. That takes into account injuries, sometimes long, multiple game injuries throughout the season. So we landed on that. But again, within the room, I think there was a consensus that this is a joint issue, called, team league, team player issue, and that there's a little bit of fault for everybody. I would say there are some cases, I think particularly with younger players, I'd say it's less about a veteran player issue where to the extent they come into the league and it seems to be the norm that the expectation isn't that we have an 82 game season. I think we had to reset there. Mm-hmm. But again, I say more directly, we're not saying this is a player only issue. We're saying that for the entire league, we all need to come together. And again, as Joe Dumars says, we are an 82-game league.
The WNBA has a finals going on. I'm looking at the Liberty. I'm looking at the Aces. I'm enjoying what I'm seeing here. How is the league feeling about the WNBA at this particular moment in time, particularly?
Brothers, the NBA continues to try to push the WNBA. Honestly, brothers, I'm going to go ahead and end this video and start a part 2 to it. So I'm going to sign out.